Hi, and welcome to BrokerTools, where we unpack the tools, systems, and strategies that help brokers optimize the way they work. I'm Katie, your host, and today we are catching up with Bronwyn from Penhaligon Applied Psychology. If you have been following along with BrokerTools podcast, you'll know that we've already talked about cybersecurity, CRMs, fact finds, team development, and marketing. However, we're kind of going in a slightly different direction today and focusing on the human behind it all, you. At the time of this recording, we have just entered into 2026, literally 1 week into the new year. And while most people are goal setting, planning, and pushing forward, I thought it would be a perfect time to talk about broker burnout and how to avoid it. We all know that being a broker can be fun, exciting, and incredibly rewarding. It can also be extremely isolating, high pressure, and emotionally demanding. So if you've been feeling overwhelmed or anxious, or could use some practical strategies to manage stress while still working towards your big audacious goals, this conversation is for you. Bronwyn, welcome to the pod.
Thank you so much for having me, Katie.
You are most welcome. I'm actually really looking forward to this conversation because, like we were just saying before we started this actual conversation, as positive as we always want to start the year, the truth is being a broker is a lot to manage. I know that we've just had the Christmas New Year break, and it doesn't mean that you and I were just saying that we are starting off pretty positive, but it doesn't mean everybody else is starting off positive. And so I think having this whole honest conversation about broker burnout and how to avoid it will probably be a really great way to start 2026. Oh my gosh, we're here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also agree. I'm thrilled that this is a topic that we're leading off with, particularly in the year of the horse. There's been a lot of vibing happening around that, where horses are strong and they're stoic and they push through and they gallop into the distance. But as someone who owned horses back in the day when I was in my youth, they're also really precious and they need rugging and lots of care, and you need to rest them and warm them up, right? So yes, absolutely. There's a lot of strength available for us this year, but we also need to balance that with what we know is going to have us be the most optimized versions of ourselves.
I couldn't agree more. I do love that you are into Chinese astrology. Because we're now entering. So I want to go down the rabbit holes of numerology, because we're now in a 1 year. So if last year was chaotic and crazy for you, it's because we were in a finishing year. And so now we're stepping into, like you said, the horse year, and as we do want to gallop across and gallop through, it's that whole energy of renewal.
Well, and it's also a theme that I see and discuss with people in clinic all the time, right? That are coming through from particularly in the broking world and the area of financial services, because it is a high pressure environment, right? Let's not pretend that it isn't. It often is sold to people as being, you can work from home, you can choose your hours, do the pickups and drop-offs at school, and it's this really wonderful lifestyle. You'll make great money and you'll have heaps of friends. It's also really isolating. It's a hard slog. It's a huge burn. You get a lot of pressure from both the clients you're trying to service and also then trying to work with the banks, the aggregators, and those kinds of guys to get the exemptions and the exceptions to get things done on time. So it's a lot. And I think that if we can appreciate that as we kick off on this fresh new year and work with that instead of pushing against it and having the friction there, we're probably going to be a bit more likely to actually find that this year is going to be one that we can genuinely succeed at.
Which is, I guess, why we always start off the new year with New Year goals. Most people try to, at least. Before we go into some of those details, I think it would be good for people to have maybe a little bit of background, because you and I obviously just became fast friends, but most people may not know you yet. And so what helped you come into the career of becoming a strategic psychotherapist?
Yes, thank you, Katie. Oh gosh, it is a little bit of a story. I guess we're on a podcast, so I'm hoping people are comfy. But essentially, my version of me that you have with you today was a long way in the making, right? So I originally went down the path of working in advertising and marketing. So fresh out of uni, studying and doing that, I worked in that space for 15, 20 years, right up to CSD type roles. And it was in my final client facing role that I was in when COVID hit. And I got my Don't Come Monday because it was a multinational company and I was on a contract. And they're like, look, we don't know what's going to happen. Everyone's in lockdown. Sorry about it. But yeah, we're just going to call it here. So I did what any self-respecting woman did was I sat in the bath and drank some wine and cried a lot. And then as lockdown was happening, you know, it's a long time ago now, right? But maybe just do a bit of a retrospective. I remember we were all locked up in our homes and suddenly we had all this time available, right? So there were no KPIs, there were no things to do, that you couldn't go out on adventures. People were rediscovering versions of themselves. So remember, everyone was baking bread, like sourdough became a vibe. Some people went down that moment of playing musical instruments or learning languages. I decided to have an existential crisis and start to question who I was as a person. And with that void of no deliverables, nothing to manage, nothing to produce, nothing to add value to, there was this real question mark around who even am I? Am I even real? Like, what is the purpose of me? And I distinctly
Mm.
remember sitting with a cup of coffee one morning and my new best friends, Gladys and Dr. Chant, who were telling me how many people had COVID and how many were dead. Because remember, we'd get our daily updates. And this was in that period of time where funerals had just been announced that they were capped at 10 people. And I remember
Oh.
thinking, if I get COVID and I die, who's going to be at my funeral and what are they going to say about me? How will I be remembered? And it was a really visceral moment of realizing at a very deep level that I actually wasn't all that proud of the career world and the life that I'd created for myself. And if I was going to die prematurely of COVID, then I wanted to have done something that meant something, that helped people, and that genuinely made a difference in the world. And to be honest, marketing campaigns and ad stuff, buy this stuff and you'll be happy, didn't exactly really ladder up with my new version of me. So I went about studying again and, yeah, discovered strategic psychotherapy, which is the most incredible way of being able to genuinely move someone from feeling stuck and limited and depleted to empowered and resourceful and actually taking charge of their lives again. I'm not all that interested in doing those deep dives into childhood trauma and unpacking your relationship with your mom and let's, go looking for a causal root story because we don't have a time machine, right? Um, but I do believe that people go into a therapeutic intervention because they want to change their future. Yeah. They're interested.
Mm.
How can I make my life better? And let's face it, the world is moving so fast. There are so many demands on it that when you do find yourself in a tricky, shitty spot, ain't nobody got time for that. There is so much that you've got to get done. So sitting there and doing this big deep dive and, unpacking it all, I mean, how helpful is it? It's more a case of, well, where are you now? Where do you want to be? And how do we get you from here to there as fast as possible? Remember, I come from advertising and marketing, so I'm very impatient and I like to move quite quickly with my clients. And it tends to work really well, particularly in these kinds of industries where people are also got shit to do, businesses to run, families that need them, and a whole beautiful, amazing world of life ahead of them.
Yeah, and I think this is, I guess, the difference between a psychologist or a psychotherapist and a strategic one. Because as you were talking about it, it actually made me reflect on things. And I was like, with your brain, it can it's a big prediction machine, is what they say. So if you remunerate on things that are not going well, then that unfolds also, and then it can steamroll, and then you go into that place. Whereas being as a strategic psychotherapist, you're like,
Mm.
yeah, you this crappy thing happened.
Mm. Yeah,
um,
yeah. It's
we
certainly
can't
not.
time machine back into fixing that.
Absolutely. And you know what, Katie? Yeah, sometimes people do get curveballs or sucker punches, and everybody that I've ever spent time with has a war story, right? But there are two things that happen with that. Again, the traditional, psychotherapeutic way of intervention is let's understand it. Let's seek to look for the meaning behind it, where it comes from, what's going on. Every single time you tell your war story, that shitty, horrible thing that you know happened, you remyelinate that. So essentially, you're building that neural connection in your brain. And here's the crappy thing about that: it's your brain doesn't know the difference between what's imagined and what's real. So every time you
Mm,
tell that story, you feel it again. You hurt again. You get nervous again. You get tense again because you're basically torturing yourself. And I'm like, why on earth would I do that to anybody? I'm not interested in hurting people. So I'm like, I don't need to hear your story. I will listen for those words that and bits of nods and those cognitive disassociations and things that are going on for you, the patterns that you can hear in people's
mm,
language that will basically explain what that story may have looked like. But essentially, as you were saying before, our mindset really does determine what our life experience looks like. So if you focus on the shitty bits, you're going to see more shitty bits. Your brain is wired for pattern. It likes to look and play snap all the time. Oh, this is just like that. Ah, here's another example of this. And that's how we get into those rumination cycles, yeah? If you can
yeah.
understand that and flip it and reverse it, and you start choosing to focus on what's going well, where you're making progress, the things you're grateful for, the people that you have around you that are supportive and that you care about, that's what you start to notice and manifest more of. So I know it's using words like manifesting sounds a little bit woo-woo, but essentially the way that you choose to face up to the world is what will be reflected back to you simply because of the neuroscience behind it.
I agree. I also am highly aware that sometimes you get smashed. And in my own personal experience, I have found sometimes what I call a little bit of wallowing actually helps. So you wallow, but you give yourself a time frame to wallow. So I'm
Mm.
allowed to wallow for 10 minutes. That's it. Or, you know, because I think sometimes, people go, it's my mindset. I need to fix my mindset. And sometimes that's actually not really the solution. It's actually feeling like you were saying, because we were doing this whole repeating thing, you're
Mm.
feeling it and you're repeating the feeling. But sometimes you need to what we call feel through it
Mm-hmm.
is
Mm-hmm.
is what I found.
Yeah, I'm a big, big fan of feelings, right? I just think that there are some times that, yes, if you deny them, they'll get louder and they'll become problematic for you, right? I mean, there are people that I've worked with in clinic that I fondly refer to as being emotionally constipated because, they've got so much inside them that they've been pretending isn't there, that then they're almost terrified of opening any kind of feeling because, oh my gosh, what will happen and how, maybe I can't handle it, what's going to come out. But the more that we do that, the worse it becomes.
Mm,
The other part around it too is you don't want to live there. When you're going through shitty stuff and bad things happen, absolutely recognize it for what it is. Sit with the feelings, let yourself hurt, let yourself cry, scream into a pillow if you need to, do whatever you need to do to process that. But then, yeah, to your point, move through it and be like, okay, cool story, bro. What am I going to do about it? What am I going to change now? How am I going to help lift myself up here? And it may be that sometimes, yeah, we do get those sucker punches that knock us on our ass, and we're like, actually, I can't do this one on my own. I need someone to throw me a hand and help me up. And that's perfectly okay.
yeah, and I guess this is where the value of your types of services, because again, sometimes we do hold these things internally with ourselves. We don't even share it with some of our friends, and so we might be remunerating and we might be having a hard time by ourselves and not reaching out. When do you notice it would be a good time for some person to try and reach out? Because this is where I guess what we had to try and talk about broker burnout, because it's the stacking that
Yeah.
causes the burnout.
Yeah, look, I think well, there's a few different ways to slice and dice here, but essentially what I hear a lot from people, particularly the men that I work with, which is, to be honest, probably about 80% of the people I work with are male. They are often speaking to me because they don't want to burden anyone else with what they're going through.
Mm.
And I find that really hard to sit with, because as a person who is being trusted to hear what's weighing heavy on their chest or what's been clogging their mind, it is such an honourable moment to be in that position to be able to provide that help and support. So it certainly doesn't feel like I'm being burdened at all. It's actually, like I said, an honour that they trust me enough to be able to be open. But at the same time, yes, appreciate that in our relationships and life at work and life in family, it can be problematic to unload and share what's happening without causing new rounds of problems that you then have to navigate through. So I think it's about documentation. I'm a big thing on, trying to get some data, because sometimes we're in these moments and they feel huge and heavy and hard, but it's also like a wave, right? I mean, that's what our feelings are. They are transitory. They'll come, they'll go. Some will be bigger and stronger than others. But if you can keep some data around, how was my day? What rating am I giving it out of 10? And then what am I attributing that rating to? So maybe today's a 7 out of 10 because I had a great podcast, I met a new person, and I had the most beautiful coffee in the sunshine this morning. And maybe yesterday I would rate probably a 4 because, I was traveling interstate, I was really tired, and, my Uber cancelled at the last minute. It was really annoying. So it's about going, if you get enough data and then you're getting that context about how am I doing the rating, well, then you actually know, what am I working with here? Is this actually a transitory problem that I'm in right now? Or is there a theme that keeps coming through? And maybe I need to do something about that.
Yeah, I agree. As we were talking, I guess my whole background is CRM design and, building out those workflow systems. And as you were talking about those score metrics, I see that we score a lead, like as in
Mm-hmm.
how good or quality of a lead that is. How likely are they going to convert to the next stage and things like that. We can, what you're saying is doing some sort of similar metrics, but with ourselves.
Totally, totally. And this feeds straight into, when we were opening, and I guess the purpose of the conversation around the psychological safety and how are you being at work as well, right? Because there are some parts of our roles that are energizing and wonderful. We can lose ourselves in and get into that beautiful flow state where you're just having the most grand old time. And then there are other elements of your work where you're like, oh my God, I would rather get punched in the face than do that particular task. And so it's about recognizing that some things are going to be great, some things are going to suck a little bit. But when you're in a business and you're starting to think about, okay, maybe I can get someone on board to support me, or maybe I can start delegating a little bit. What am I going to delegate? What am I going to hand off? I would highly recommend the stuff that you don't like, that you struggle with, that you find energetically depletes you, that isn't good for you. Get rid of that shit and give it to someone who loves it, right? And if you don't
Mm.
quite know what you like and what you don't like, again, just for a week or two, keep a journal, keep a diary with a column down the middle, the stuff that feels good and the stuff that doesn't. And then again, you've got the data to look at and you're like, okay, I actually know what's working for me here and what isn't. And that can then start to make it really practical and easy for you to start scaling in a way that works for you in the most positive way possible.
Yes, and as we're talking about this is not just about the business. This is also your life. So if there are things within your life, because I mean, from all the conversations that I know you and I've had with the different people that we work with, the you know brokering and life actually blend together. Like
Mm,
the impact of it is not just your work life; it's also your family life.
mhm.
And so what's working at home, or what, and sure, you can't outsource family time, but there are other ways that there are things that you're doing within the family that may not be working. And so what are those things and how do you find,
Hmm. Yeah, it's
you
about,
know
I think, yeah, you're right. It's around doing an edit. And perhaps if that's how we were approaching January, as opposed to having, here's my big goal or here's my New Year's resolution, I shall not drink anymore during the week or whatever it is for you. What if we modified that a little bit to add a little bit more flexibility and to just go, here are some of the things that I'm choosing to limit this year, or this is what I'm inviting more of this year. These are the things that I'm just not available for unless it's absolutely
Mm.
necessary. Because again, that gives you a bit more flexibility and a little bit more playfulness. Just like, when you do that, finally, get yourself ready to clean out the junk drawer in your, the third one in the kitchen is what it usually is. And it's filled up with all kinds of random stuff like old bills and bits of string and dead batteries and stuff. And you eventually pull it out and you go, what even is this stuff? Like, what have I been holding on to that I don't really need and doesn't serve any purpose? It feels so good when you clean that stuff out. So you can do the same
Yeah.
thing in the way that you look at your life. So that editing process of what can I hand over to someone and what can I continue to do that's going to actually be okay for me, that I'm comfy with. I'm thinking here in the home life, right? So, for
Mm.
example, one of the things that drives me crazy is when my husband will stack the dishwasher because he doesn't stack it the way that I like it stacked, and it's a really impractical way of stacking it. It drives me bananas. But at the same time, we're talking about stacking the dishwasher. It really doesn't friggin' matter. As long as the dishes get in and they come out and they're clean, who cares, right?
Mm.
So I'm happy to delegate that to him, knowing it won't be the way that I want it to be. However, there are some other tasks in the home that I'm like, no, I'm going to hold on to this because this actually really matters to me, and that's okay. But I think, particularly as women, when we're trying to run businesses and run families, we tend to also overextend ourselves and overfunction. And then there are people in our homes that can underfunction as a result. And that can become
Mm.
problematic because you do train people how to treat you. And if what your training is, don't worry about it, I'll do it, well, babe, that's what the whole year is going to look like. So my suggestion is have a look at what's happening, and is there anything that you would be happy to let go of to give yourself back a little bit of time and a little bit of sanity and a little bit more energy for the stuff that actually matters this year.
Yeah. I guess, and I think looking at those types of things. So this, like I've mentioned and we've talked about through here, it burnout happens because it's a stacking of things, or
Mm-hmm.
it's a and I think maybe it would be good to actually define what burnout is so that people can maybe recognize the signs that they're stacking. And it can either be anxiety or other just frustrations that are occurring. Because we can, we talk about anxiety like a sensation or something, but
Mm.
it's because something else has happened. Does that
Yeah,
make sense?
yeah, that makes perfect sense. So I guess where I typically talk around the burnout piece, particularly with the high performers, right, is because we've normalized so many of those behaviors that are aligned with it, and that we've accepted it as that's just part of the role. That's just part of how we are, and it's actually fundamentally really poor, and then will erode you very very quickly. But there is a big difference between being burned out and being stressed. Stress
Mm.
stress has got an energy to it. Stress is when you hear people say things like, I've just got too much on. There are just so many things to get through. And they're working in that space of feeling like they're running towards and constantly chasing, right? That's when you're in that stress space. And yes, this absolutely aligns with the higher peaks in cortisol, adrenaline. We get into those loops and cycles. We find it hard to sit back and to rest and to allow ourselves to stop because we're in that cycle of I must be productive. I've got so much on. I've got to do it. I've got to do it. And you're pushing and chasing yourself. Yeah.
Mm.
Burnout is when you've been doing that for so long that you become depleted. The language of burnout that you'll hear in people are, I just don't have enough time. I don't have enough energy. They move from that moment of feeling like everything's too much to suddenly they don't have enough. And it's
Mm.
quite a big distinction. So, burnout doesn't happen overnight. Burnout is that cumulative effect of being in that really stressed state for too long, where you become more into an adrenal fatigue. Your body literally cannot keep giving you the cortisol adrenaline spikes that you've needed to maintain performing in the environment that you're in. And this is where it becomes an issue for businesses, because that is fundamentally not a safe environment to have people working in. If they're having to constantly overwork themselves, do longer hours, put in more, not take breaks, not be able to have holidays, that kind of stuff, well, you've got a system design problem. You haven't
Mm,
actually set your business up in a way that is sustainable. So, what we see in the brokers, right, that how it bubbles up is that you're holding everyone else's stress a lot of the time. There's that constant need to be available. Um, Typically, if you're working on your own, you don't you don't really have someone else to, as a running mate, to sense check your decisions. So then you become,
mm-hmm.
in the decision fatigue as well, and that pressure and that feeling of responsibility just seems to be never ending. So yeah, these are absolutely environments where your nervous system just never really gets a chance to rest and recover.
Yeah, and we had mentioned this earlier. Psychological safety at work. It's um, it's a law now. It's becoming a law, and so
Yeah, yeah.
uh,
So it's at that same level now of responsibility for a business as the standard that we'd all be familiar with, the workplace health and safety. I even remember in my first job working at KFC, I had to have all of that training about slippery floors and, like making sure things were plugged in properly and all of that kind of stuff. Um, Now that's also stretched itself into the psychological safety piece too. So it's on the businesses to make sure that they have an audit and an understanding of, well, what are the factors that could put people's mental health at risk here? And moreover, what are we doing to mitigate those risks? And how are we supporting people that are affected by them? Again, just like at KFC, how they had the slip hazard policy that you had to be across, and you knew what to do if you actually did slip and fall and hurt yourself. It's the same deal now with the psychological piece.
yes, and so you know, I guess where I was going with it, when you're in a team and you're the big boss, that's a lot to look after, let alone your own self. And so you, like you were saying, that you take on other people's stress, and and I guess finding that pocket of relief for yourself, let alone the team, or building those things in, um, that's going to take a technique or a process or a new way of thinking,
Mhm.
as you move through.
Yeah, and I would also add to that a commitment, right? Because
Mm,
let's face it, you can't make good decisions when you're dysregulated, when your nervous system is out of whack and you yourself are burned out or strung out or stressed out. Like, you are not in a good position there to make those really good strategic sound decisions for either yourself, your team, your clients, your family. It's just not a good place to be. So I think, yeah, and this sort of saying when we first sat down, it's like, have a look at your year, have a look at your life, have a look at the system that you're running yourself through, and what
mm,
are the things that you need to modify here to make this year be a little bit different to last year, particularly if you were amongst the people that feel like they just face planted over the finish line and didn't really allow themselves or have energy to enjoy, the festive period because they were recovering from the year that was. Yeah, but maybe let's not do that again. Yeah, let's switch it up a little
mm.
bit and just build in some of those disciplined moments of recovery and recalibration so that you're actually going to have this year be a little bit more bountiful for you.
Yeah. Are you happy to go through some ways somebody could actually, I guess, because I think about like the business leaders, the ones who are actually running and managing their brokers, and some are
Mm.
just managing themselves and maybe one other credit analyst, and others are managing multiple teams. But the outcomes often come from leadership. So
Yeah.
if there was a place to start within someone's self, where should they start? Because you know you can't roll out a plan, and if it feels like another to do.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. Oh, I'm so with you. I'm so with you, babe. Like, because here's the thing, and this is like often when people are coming to work with me in clinic, right? They find themselves kind of stuck in a swamp, right? They feel very bogged down and smelly and dirty, and everything's hard and heavy, and they're like, man, I feel like I just need to chuck it all in and start again. You don't. You really don't. It's let's just make a few little tweaks, a few little changes, and then you start feeling a bit better and doing a bit better and being a bit better, right? And we know the brain's work they designed to follow pattern. Yeah. So we
Mhm.
create some really nice little neural pathways for it to follow, and then it does the work for you. All about the hacking of the awesomeness. So one of the easiest ways that you can start to shake things up a little bit and feel a little bit more betterer, the real science words there, is literally just having a look at the bookends of your day. And what I mean by the bookends, what are you doing in the morning? What are you doing in the evening? Because we
Mhm.
know how important sleep is. If you're not getting good sleep, then you're starting your day in a deficit. Likewise, if you're not setting yourself up effectively in the morning, then your whole day you feel like you chase your tail, right? So these are the two most like optimized areas to be able to make a couple of little tweaks and changes. From the research I've done, the most effective way to start your day is just by utilizing that first 20 minutes in a way that is going to work with your neurochemistry and your biology. So, what you want to do there when your brain is a fresh, clean sponge and it's all nice and zhuzhy is throw yourself out of bed, put on some pants, and get out into the world. Leave your phone behind. Don't involve yourself in any kind of technology. Just you, the air, the ground, a little bit of movement. The science shows
Mhm.
that if you spend 20 minutes, the first 20 minutes you're awake, having your heart rate at about 120 beats per minute. So we're not talking running, not even jogging. We're talking literally just going for a 20-minute walk. Then that will give you up to 12 hours of increased neural function. It's the
Oh
best
wow.
ROI ever, right? So 20 minutes for a walk first thing in the morning. And what will happen then within the first 5-10 minutes is your body will start to naturally wake up properly. And then you'll start to have those moments where the day feels a little bit easier. You'll be noticing things a little bit more, the energy and the oxygen circulating really lovely. And then suddenly you'll have these epiphanies or, oh, I remember I have to do that. I have to call this person, blah, blah, blah. And so by the time you've got home, you have your to-do list done. You know what your day is like. You feel invigorated. Eat some food, have a shower, start your day. Bada bing, bada boom, off you go. At the end of the day, again, I'm a bit of a nerd, so I've done a fair bit of research into how we can optimize the wind down period. Really encourage people to revisit and remember what the evening routine looked like when they were little, or what are they doing with their children. Because think about it, when we were little kids, there was a system and there was a process between playing or doing school or whatever and going to sleep. And there was steps
Mhm.
you knew that were predictable, that happened every single time. And that was your body's way of telling your brain, okay, we're winding down now and it's okay to go to sleep. I think as adults, we tend to go from being high octane, doing all the things, to then going, okay, and like flicking a light, boom, now I want to be asleep. And then we wonder why we lie there thinking about shit for 3 hours. So, working with our biology, it's more like a dimmer switch than a flick light, right? So, little kid, typically you have dinner, then they jump in the bath, then you do pajamas, and then you read a story, and then you go to sleep. You can do the same thing as a grown up, or maybe an adult version of that. But essentially, you want to, limit the amount of screen time that you're having. You want to kind of keep things nice and calm and quiet, not have any of those big, awkward, uncomfortable conversations with your partner. Basically, it's all about how do we just make this really nice and quiet and restful. Some of my clients
Mm.
are even revisiting some of the books that they read as children to give themselves story time before going to sleep, which is really quaint. And yeah, it's working. So then, of course, you're getting the kind of sleep that you need, and then you're waking up and starting your day in a way that works with your body. And you can find yourself, give it 3-4 days of this. Honestly, you'll be a different person. It really doesn't take very much.
No, and I like it. And as much as we also want to think that everybody had a great childhood, sometimes the sleep routine of um, childhood may not have been great
It
for
may
you.
not have looked like
And
that at
so,
all, right? Yeah, absolutely.
one of the things for me, my childhood was pretty okay, but I have met enough people to know that if they were to try and replay a childhood sleep routine, it wouldn't be good for them. And so, what I have found is think about like house music. I don't know if you know house music very
Mm,
much, but I just, there's the wind up. So if you think about
mm,
house music as the wind up in your start of the day, so it starts low, it comes up, and this is how
mm,
you can get into your day, and you're vibing because you're then heading out. But then house music also winds down
mhm.
and it comes down and it almost like stops and goes really nice and quiet where you rest
Yeah,
before
absolutely.
it drops a beat.
Yeah.
But then, like with that dropping of the beat, that hopefully is symbolic for you to go dead asleep.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. Look, I guess it's about kind of recognizing that, as we're all listening to this podcast, we are all proper grown-ups, right? You are literally living your life. And you do that on your terms. You get to say what's in and what's out, what's you're available for and what you're not available for. You get to decide your sleep time. If you want to have cookies for breakfast, you can do that because you're a grown up, right? So I guess it's really a call to arms to take responsibility and go, okay, if my life isn't doing what I want it to be doing, then it's actually on me to do something about that. And yes, I may need some support and I may need an accountability partner or whatever, but it's actually on me to determine and to decide and then to follow through. Like, it's not a Disney movie. No one's coming to save you, right? You got to save your damn self. And sometimes all you really need to do is choose to put yourself at the top of the priority list and decide that, yep, I'm going to give myself the gift the first 20 minutes of my day. I'm going to start it differently and just see what happens.
Yeah. And hopefully it gives you that space to go, okay, I can now start thinking strategically
Yep.
about who I want to be in business,
Mm-hmm.
how I want to process what I want, how do I have a great family and other life if you don't have family, how do you make the life that you choose?
Yeah, yeah. Something I constantly bang on about is that what my biggest wish and hope for all my clients is that they come to a point where they know and hand on heart will say, yeah, I chose my life. I didn't just settle for it. Because
Mm,
we all have so much agency and so much opportunity to do whatever it is that is available for us, right? And you've got so many resources and skills. Like, there's just so much available. I think that if we can get out of our own way and stop being limiting, then it becomes like so empowering and such a wonderful way to be in the world.
yeah. Thank you so much for having this conversation with me, Bronwyn. I think, if anybody else out there had a great time listening to this conversation as well, where should they go and what should they be on the lookout from you?
So I spend the majority of my time and energy in the social space simply on LinkedIn. So you can look me up on LinkedIn. Probably once or twice a week, I'll drop some content that literally comes out of a session that would have happened that same day. It's very much organic, and something will come up that I feel that may be helpful and supportive for other people. So make sure you look me up and hit that follow button so you can get some free therapy. Um, but if people wanted to work with me directly, then yeah, literally it's just shoot me a note or jump on my website. I've tried to make the booking mechanic as easy as doing something fabulous like going to a restaurant or booking a day spa. You can literally just go and choose the day and time combination that works for you, and we can hang out together in real life or via Zoom.
Perfect. If you do have questions or if you would like Bronwyn and I to have a follow up conversation, let us know. I'm looking forward to doing more conversations on how brokers can optimize their world. Again, thank you very much for joining me, Bronwyn, and I look forward to the next one.
Thank you so much, Katie. It's been an absolute delight.
You're welcome. All right. See you later, people.